People who got cheated on and gave them a second chance, what happened? My partner never cheated again, and we are currently in a wonderful, healthy relationship. Once I found out, we took some time apart and stopped living together for a while. Then when I felt ready, we talked about what happened a lot. We really worked together to dig into why he cheated. Turns out there were reasons related to what he was going through at the time and how he didn't have good coping mechanisms, etc. There were also reasons related to our relationship and how things had changed between us after 7 years together. We mutually decided what we both wanted our relationship to look like and what we needed from each other. Recovery involved a lot of individual work on ourselves and a lot of work on communication and the relationship itself. We're coming up on 18 years now. No one has cheated since, and it's been over 10 years since it happened. I love this man with all my heart, and I forgave him completely a long time ago. Story 2. For the first week after finding out about my wife's affair, I went and stayed with a work friend. Good dude. Her affair had ended over a year prior to me finding out, and her fling had long since moved away. I moved back home after a week, and I didn't give her the silent treatment but mostly kept to myself and was still deciding on how to proceed with my life when she had her first manic episode. She ended up in the hospital for 6 months and diagnosed bipolar 2, and I felt so stuck. She needed me, but I was still processing the betrayal. No one in our life knew about the affair except my one work friend, and I knew how I would be labeled by all our loved ones if I decided to tell the truth and leave when she needed me the most. In sickness and in health, right? Her road to wellness was a long and winding one. And 6 years later, she was in a healthy enough spot where I felt comfortable bringing up a divorce. We split amicably and remain friendly, and still watch each other dogs once in a while 10 years later. She has battled her illness consistently and has not had any luck with men due to it. They either meet her during a manic phase and can't handle the depression, or meet her during a depressive episode and are shocked to the core when the party begins. I have since found my soulmate and am happily married. Story 3. In my experience, she cheated on a guy to be with me and then left the guy. I had no idea. Then we had a kid and she cheated on me with 4 other guys separately and individually, one of whom she left to be with me, while telling them that she wasn't cheating on me because we didn't have sex, which is an odd definition of it. Never mind that it also wasn't true. I examined every way that there might have been to keep things together. It wasn't the sex that bothered me, but the breach of trust. Once I knew how she was communicating, I confronted her and proposed the possibility of forgiveness if she'd confess and open up her phone and just show me how far things had gone. She feigned like she was going to do that, and at the last second moved to quickly attempt to delete the app she was using. I tried again, read "ethical slut" from cover to cover, and proposed an arrangement that wouldn't result in divorce and single parenting and child custody suits. But no, being open and honest about sexual desire was viewed as too kinky, and she lashed out. Years later, she and I would still have sex while she dredged all of manhood for a sugar daddy, which really helped take the edge off of the full-on loathing of her and myself that otherwise was persistent in the context of co-parenting. But when she settled on a guy, I stopped and made it very clear in writing why I stopped. It was time for me to respect that relationship, but I'd also warned him about her past because it would have been disloyal to the possible future stepfather of my kid if I didn't. Better to be a bro and see if he was willing to stick out the inevitable. He did, and he revealed to me how I'd been cheated with to kick off my relationship, and then he caught her, and she confessed to still dealing with these same other guys and with me, and he told me to lay off. No problem. Already done. Still, he felt betrayed and so did she. Sometime later, she left him and within a short span of time was with a previous boyfriend. And probably others too. So, the moral of the story here is that once a cheater, not an ethical slut, mind you, is identified as a cheater, cut ties. They are as much an enemy to non-sociopaths as are wolves to sheep. Perhaps legally they are afforded rights, but you owe them nothing. Story 4. Happened to me. I was dating a girl for almost 4 years, HS and then college GF. Thought I was going to marry her. She was in nursing school and would hang out with her nursing pals after a tough midterm to bars or dinner. No issues for me. I trusted her. She went out to a bar to meet up with my girl cousins and their friends, same class and friend group, and they caught my GF at the making out with one of their classmates, some dude with a kid and a fiancé. I wasn't at the bar because I wasn't 21 yet, and I figured she would call me to pick her up after, or hitch a ride with my cousins. My GF at the time told me what she did, and my cousins did take her home but told her the next day that if she didn't tell me what happened, they would do it. I thought I was going to marry this girl. I went through it all and took her back. She didn't apologize for what she did. She just told me, I don't regret what I did. It's my life kind of attitude. She just became distant and broke it off with me maybe less than 2 months later. In those 2 months, nothing was the same. I developed low self-esteem, lost my self-respect, had crippling anxiety whenever she didn't answer my calls/texts. After she broke up with me, she told me she just wanted to live her life and be free. A few months later, she ended up dating the bartender guy where she used to go out with her other friends. Weird shit. I went into a depression for a few months. Dropped out of school, gained weight, had a lot of trust issues. Eventually, I turned my life around. After a couple relationships, some flings, changed some habits, I felt I was able to overcome a lot of those feelings and resentments. But it honestly took a very, very long time for someone like me. It wasn't easy. I'm married now with the love of my life in my 2nd year of marriage. Got my master's by going to school and supporting myself by working multiple jobs. I've seen my ex at my cousins' birthdays once in a while. She greets my family members, tells them how much she misses them and how they're still family to her, and avoids eye contact with me and my wife. But definitely, my sweetest joy was at my cousin's wedding where I was just hanging by my table because I am a wallflower. Saw my ex hugging my relatives and being all gushy, which made me feel kinda awkward. My fiancé, we got married a few months later, took my hand on the dance floor and slow danced with me. I hate dancing, but at that moment, I saw my ex just sitting on my seat, just watching me dance with my soon-to-be wife. She looked so pale. She even picked up my nephew, 2 years old, and tried to dance with him next to me for my attention. My now wife just told me it's okay. Just dance with me. And man, all that pain, resentment, awkwardness just melted away. I remember the night before my wedding. I just reflected about all the hardships I went through, insecurities, and all that to be with someone that really just holds you down is best feeling in the world. I was so thankful for my wife. She changed my world. Story 5. She cheated again. First caught her. Well, it wasn't exactly cheating at the time because we weren't official yet, but both of us could pretty well see the writing on the wall. Side note. Also kind of a good lesson. You pretty well know when you're going out with someone, it doesn't need some grand official ceremony to make it cheating. Anyway, brushed it aside and moved on. Mostly. Didn't exactly trust her, though. She ended up asking me, since she'd had less experience at the time, not entirely true, but she was trying to stroke my ego, if she could do an open relationship, but only open on her end. Of course I said no. Few months later I find out she slept with another woman. Considering our former conversations, I didn't take kindly on this. When pressing her more, found out, she kinda sorta left out the fact that she also was f***ing some dude. Color me not amused. She makes an excuse, something like, oh, but we broke up 2 days before. We hadn't. We'd gotten into an argument, and she apparently took that as permission to f*** around. Well, after a long conversation, we decided to try and work through it. I honestly don't know why. I think some part of me just didn't want things to change. In any case, my trust for her was absolutely blown. Especially when I managed to pin her to another incident she never mentioned, but I'd already forgiven, and it was way in the past, so water under the bridge, right? For her part, though, she remained faithful and made an honest attempt for a good year or so. I just couldn't muster up a will to care, though, and for a while we'd argue about increasingly more petty things. Well, eventually things settled down, and I began to trust her again. Decided we'd kinda start over on her birthday. I'd take her out, make a big thing of it, really make the attempt. Plan was she was gonna go out with some college friends. Come back the next morning and I'd pick her up the next evening. She never showed. Turns out she wasn't hanging with college friends. She was visiting some dude in another city she'd been sexting for months and stayed over for the full weekend and ignored me. Also, she said it was completely not cheating because we'd broken up again like a couple weeks earlier. We hadn't. We had a small argument and had continued on like normal after. Well, that was pretty well the last straw. Said some goodbyes, traded some stuff back. That was all she wrote. The endgame to the story: she ended up marrying the guy and buying a house with him. Immediate regrets. Apparently turned out pretty nasty. She ended up trying to cheat on him with me, wound up getting caught by him, and getting into a big old fight about it. Couple years later, the last I heard, they were still together, and she was f***ing around with a coworker because both of their marriages were miserable. He ended up getting caught and had to choose between wife and her. He chose wife. She ends up stuck back in loveless marriage. Story 6. I made the biggest mistake of my life, crossing that boundary band, breaking my partner's trust. No sex, but still put myself in such a stupid position. My wife gave me another chance, and I am forever grateful to her. I have never and will never come close to crossing that line again. She is the most important person I've ever met, and I will always feel the shame of hurting her in that way. It is something that will never not be a part of our relationship, and I'm always working and striving to show her that she can trust me, but is not something I ever can expect from her. That was 12 years ago. We have 2 amazing kids and are always working to grow closer together. We have speed bumps like everybody, but we've learned to listen to each other rather than get defensive. In no way do I think it is a wise choice to give a cheater a second chance, but I am the luckiest man out there that she did. She's the most amazing woman I've ever met, and it would have been the biggest loss of my life. I have learned a hell of a lot about myself at her expense. I will always strive to pay her back for her faith in me.